room. We'll give it a minute for people to gather, and then we will kick off the Career Buzz Sports Edition. So stay tuned. We'll get started in just a minute. All right, it is literally 12:01, so we're going to jump in. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jennifer Barber, and I'm the Executive Director of your Sacramento State Alumni Association, and I'll be acting as your moderator for today's Career Buzz. Thank you for joining us for this session. We have speakers here who are focused on sharing about their careers and how they got there in sports administration. I'm honored to be here with a wonderful group of Sac State alumni, and I'm thrilled for you to hear all of their advice, diverse experiences, and stories of success that they have to share. Career Buzz, in case you didn't know, connects students and recent grads with our wide network of alumni through discussion panels, Q&A, and the opportunity to really build your network. Today's event takes advantage of that strong alumni network. You'll get to hear from these alumni who have made a significant impact within their community and who are volunteering today as part of a larger university goal to keep alumni engaged with each other as well as students. As we jump into hearing more directly from them, I want you to also know they will be sharing advice. So have your notepad handy or your notes on your phone and jot down the things that really resonate with you. I'd like to begin by welcoming our panelists to introduce themselves with name, major or degree, class year, about when you were on campus, who your employer is, and what role you fill within that organization, and a fun fact. So we're going to kick off with Eira Castillo.
Hi, everyone. I'm Eira. I graduated from Sac State in 2014 with a degree in journalism. And then I'm currently working for Seattle Reign in Seattle in the NWSL. And I am a senior manager of social media and content. Fun fact, prior to this, I worked with Sac Republic for almost 12 years. So yeah, this is my first time living outside of Sacramento. So yeah.
Well, if it makes you miss home any less, we've had a very gray and rainy week. So I hear that's what Seattle is like a lot.
Yeah.
So no, you're welcome back here anytime. All right, next up, Dave Eadie.
Hi, everybody. Dave Eadie. I'm the Chief Sports and Entertainment Officer at Visit Sacramento. I graduated with my executive MBA from Sac State in 2007. I believe I was in maybe the second ever cohort of the executive MBA program. Did my undergraduate at Ithaca College in Central New York in sport management. Fun fact, when I was younger, like probably middle school age, I was involved in competitive storytelling.
Competitive storytelling. I did not know there was such a thing.
Most people don't. That's why it's my fun fact.
Awesome. All right. Our final panelist is Pamm Hubbard.
Good afternoon. I am Pamm Hubbard, and I graduated from Sacramento State in 1994, so in the early 90s, with a degree in sociology. I currently work for Sacramento State Athletics. I serve as a senior associate athletic director and athletics chief of staff. And my fun fact is that I was a licensed funeral director for 5 years in a previous life.
From funerals to sports, that's a jump. I'm guessing we might tap into some of that experience as we get through the questions. So thank you all again for being here and sharing your time today. We appreciate it. We are going to spend the next 30 to 40 minutes hearing from the three alumni that you just met about their career journey, successes that they've encountered, ways that they innovate within their industry, as well as advice on how to make the most of your experiences, whether you're still in college or you're a recent grad or you've been out for a while and you're looking to reinvent yourself. During the presentation, our panelists will not be taking questions. However, There is a Q&A button in the bar along the bottom of your Zoom window. So please use that Q&A feature to post your questions, and we will plan to use the last 10 minutes of this session to cover as many of those as possible. All right, let's start with a fun icebreaker. I'm really piqued, Pam, by the funeral director thing, so I'm gonna start with you. What was your first job, and what are some of the life lessons that you learned from that job?
So my very first job is there is an amusement park in Sacramento called Funderland. So it's right across the street from the Sacramento Zoo. I worked there over the summers. So probably about 2 to 3 different summers while I was in high school. So I would say that life lessons that I learned from there is the importance of being on time, treating others how you want to be treated, being able to work together because, we're running an amusement park, albeit it's a small one. We're running an amusement park. And so along those same lines is also pitching in for the common goal. Now, I will also say we were 15, 16-year-olds. So also that common goal was kind of cleaning up after accidents happened at the rides. So I will tell you, when you have children, don't let them get in the ball pit. That's my tip for you also today. Things happen in the ball pit. You don't want to know what happens there.
Oh, you've confirmed my greatest fear when I was raising kids. I'm like, no, get out of the ball pit. All right, but excellent insights. And I think that really goes to show you can learn from any experience, things that are going to travel with you through your entire future career. Eira, how about you?
I was a teacher's aide in summer school when I think I was like 17 was my first job, or 16. Um, Definitely learned patience. Learned a lot about how much teachers do day in and day out from a different perspective from, being a student to actually helping out with classroom management. And I also learned that I would not be working with kids in the future. So big lesson there because my mom was in education. So that was always like a little bit of a, oh, that could be something. And then I was like, no, this is not for me. But it was a great experience.
Those are just as important lessons to have, because the last thing you want to do is stick yourself in a career path where you feel stuck and unhappy. So good experiential learning. Dave.
Yeah, my technically my first job was a paper route. I was a paper boy, and a lot of people on this call might have to go in a history book to understand what that even means. But I do still have nightmares about missing my collections, because part of that you would have to actually literally go door to door and get money for the subscription for the paper to deliver it. But my first more structured job was working in a grocery store back in New York, and I think everyone wanted to be a cashier. That was kind of the job everyone wanted, and I was they early on they identified me as someone that could kind of do a little bit of everything. I was a cashier, I was a cart boy, I was doing stuff behind the scenes, I was stocking shelves, and um, it, uh, when I was in the role, I wished I could just be a cashier like everyone else. But looking back, I realized that they recognized that I had some the willingness to kind of jump in and do whatever needed to get done, and I think that that carried forward to other jobs that I had as I continued to kind of to grow and learn. And I'd like to think that that's still a characteristic that I have and that I look for when we're bringing on new team members as well.
That ability to wear many hats and be flexible
Mhm.
is you know yeah, is so essential in the workplace. I can't even come up with the word to describe how much we rely on that quality. So good to have that insight early on. As you know, today we're here to give some insight to students and recent grads. So let's pivot and talk a little bit about what helped you along the way in developing your career from, your initial days either in the classroom, the grocery store, on the paper route, or at an amusement park. What was the best advice anyone ever gave you that really helped you kind of propel your career trajectory? Um, Dave, let's start with you.
Sure. When I moved to California to take my first job after college, I had a great mentor here, and one of the things he used to say is that a lot of the lessons he learned that carry through the rest of his life he learned in Little League. And that was be on time, wear a clean uniform, don't take a nap during the game, and don't throw rocks at each other. And I think, obviously as a metaphor, you can take a lot of those lessons and apply them to your life, to your career, supporting your teammates, not pointing fingers. I think when you're young, early on in your career, I think things like being on time are really important. They really set the foundation for kind of how people view you and that first impression that you can't ever get back. And then later on in my career, as I was, trying to advance, someone told me to act like the job that you want. If you're a manager and you want to be a director, don't wait until you're promoted to be a director to start acting like a director. And I thought that was really, really good advice, and I've tried to think that way and pass that along to others as well.
I think that's good advice. Really showcase your capabilities and help people envision you in that future role.
Exactly.
Yeah. Pam, how about you?
I'm going to say that people will always remember how you treat them and how you made them feel. I've had more times that somebody will tell me something and they will tell me, whatever it was that I said to them, which I have no recollection of telling them, but they will always end up telling me, but you made me feel like my opinions matter, my thought matters, my experience matters. So it's always that, because at the end of the day, we all have all these different experiences that we've had, on our way to wherever we're trying to get to. But it's always, how did you make that person feel at the end of the day? That's probably the best advice I've gotten.
I think 100%. And that also goes to kind of workplace balance and culture and how people get along and work well together. They don't have to be your best friends, but you got to be able to work well together.
Exactly.
Right, Eira.
Yeah, I would say along those lines, I would definitely agree with like some of the best advice is like don't burn bridges. Um, Sports is such a small world once you get into like the pro levels, like everybody knows each other, and it's just good to like have good relationships, because I think in hand with that, another really good advice I got was like make connections. Again, because it's just like it's so key to just get to know people. You never know when you're gonna run into them again, so it might be a useful connection to make. But yeah, definitely treat people how you want to be treated, and have conversations like no matter where you are. My job with Sac Republic, I actually got because I was interning at KCRA, and I started chatting with the then VP of marketing at Sac Republic, and I was telling her, I got into journalism because I want to work in sports one day. And then she came back and she's like, I actually have a position open with our talent if you want to be like a PA. And I was like, of course. And that kind of opened a ton of doors. So definitely make connections, make conversations when you can.
That is excellent advice. I mean, you never know who you might be sitting next to on an airplane or on a train or a bus or, in a restaurant. And if you're able to start conversations, they can lead to all sorts of places. And if you're in Sacramento, a fun fact, 1 in every 17 residents of the Sacramento region is an alum of Sac State. So you also have the opportunity to build your network with fellow alumni. So Eira, you started talking about hiring and how you got hired into the sports industry. If you are looking to hire someone, what are some of the qualities that you're looking for? So not necessarily skills, but what are the qualities that you're looking for as you talk to people, interview them, review their resume?
I definitely look for like people who are willing to work in teams and collaborative. Doing social and content is such a collaborative type of work because you're working with, video departments, graphic departments, partnerships departments. You're having to build those relationships. And another one is just initiative. If you show up to an interview and you know a little bit about the team, a player, you can mention like a real life example as you're talking. I know you took the initiative to learn about the team that you're wanting to work for versus just, this is a job, which, in this market, it is just a job most of the time. But like just showing that initiative that you care about the company you'll be working for is so key. And it just really shows, it really sets people, you stand out when you're talking to these companies, and these teams.
100%. I would also say that it shows you have good attention to detail because you've kind of done the research, you've paid it and you've retained it and you're able to integrate it into what you're doing. Pam, how about you?
I think probably to dovetail a little bit with what Eira said. So in the very beginning, when I'm looking at your resume, I'm looking, okay, at the bare minimum, do you have the skills to do whatever it is this job is that I'm hiring for? But then when you come in on campus or we're doing that interview, quite frankly, it's, do I want to spend 8 to 10 hours of my day with you? Do you have this personality that's going to, are you going to jump in and get the task done? Are we going to have fun together so we can actually get to this common goal? Because, all three of us will tell you there are long days and long weekends and long nights that we're all working. But if we're having a good time while we're doing it and everybody's willing to jump right in, then, that's what I'm looking for. I also want to know that you want to be here. A lot of times it's, yeah, I want to work. I mean, and I've said it when I very first came into the career, I want to work in sports. Okay, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to be here? Do you want to be in this position? And it's doing that research. It's figuring out, okay, why this job and why does this job differ from someplace else that I might be applying for? So it's quite frankly, do I want to hang out with you 8 to 10 hours a day? Are we going to mesh? Are we going to gel? Are we going to have the same sense of humor? Are we going to get dirty together and get our hands dirty and just get everything done? Then yes, that's really what I'm looking for.
That is a great point about the long hours involved in working in the arena of sports. And you've got to get along, got to work well together. Dave, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely echo everything that's already been said. I think we're looking for good teammates, team players, people willing to do extra. I think, but even taking a step back, to, your question was a little bit also even to the point of what do we look for in a resume or an interview. I think, for starters, how about no typos on the resume, and, on the cover letter, let's take the time to address it to who you're applying to. If it's a job you really want, instead of sir or madam and your company, insert the name of the person listed in the job description and list the name of the organization you'd like to work for. Just by doing that, you're probably setting yourself, apart from half of the applicants for that job. After you have an interview, send a quick, friendly, but not, not aggressive, but friendly thank you for the interview. Again, you're probably separating yourself from 50% of the people that interviewed for that role. So sometimes it's those little details, it's the attention to detail early on, and hopefully you are a person who has that attention to detail, and that's sincere when you do that on your resume, because that's a big piece of what people are looking for, at least what we're looking for, I think. And again, to echo, I think past examples of being a team player, willing to do extra, some creativity, maybe even outside of the roles you've had where you've been proactive and innovative. And I think, some type of demonstration, obviously, maybe not when you're just getting started, but as you move up, a demonstration of your network and maybe some other resources that you might bring to the role, outside of just, what's on paper on your resume.
Thank you. And yes, those typos and making sure you list the right job that you're applying for in the letter or on the resume, it's really clutch to making sure that you get fully evaluated as a candidate. You all started talking a little bit in those remarks about what work styles look like in your environments. And so I want to kind of build on that a little bit with your personal experiences of knowing the high demand, the peaks and the valleys of working in sports. How do you set goals for yourself? How do you set day-to-day goals when it's super busy? How do you set long-term goals to take advantage of the quieter time, maybe when you're off season? How do you approach that? So day-to-day and long-term goal settings so that you're successful in your career. Dave, you're still unmuted, so I'm going to call on you.
Sure. Great. Yeah, I think, for me in this role, and I think people in our organization, really understanding and taking to heart the organization's mission statement, and formally stated goals, really is kind of that bedrock for when you're trying to prioritize. And we've got 10 things to get done, in the next 3 months. How do we decide, what's A, B, and C? Well, by really falling back on that mission statement. What is our goal? Why are we here? What are we trying to accomplish? Obviously, there's nuance there, and there's things that take precedent depending on timeline. But I think when you have an organization that has clearly, well thought out mission statement goals, it's a great kind of foundation to work from. And then, I think it's important, we all get so busy, but it is important to take time throughout the year to have those strategy sessions quarterly, annually, develop your 3, 5, your plan. And again, that gives you something documented to fall back on when you're trying to evaluate priorities, because we all get things coming at us from all kinds of different directions. And, as Pam was talking about, a lot of people just like the sound of working in sports. So even just beyond employment, just the request, I don't almost said crazy, not crazy, but the requests that come out of left field for different things that people, don't have a full understanding or appreciation of what we do or why we do it. So there's always a lot coming at you from different directions, and every day is a little different, which is why we all love our jobs. But I think making sure you take the time to have a plan in place and then try to stick to it, go back with your team, review it, refresh it. But that gives you a good foundation to work from.
That's great. And there certainly is something to be said about being busy enough not to get bored in your job. So I appreciate that kind of aspect as well. Pam, how about you?
I would say this kind of along the same lines as what Davis said. A lot of our internal goals are in alignment with our campus goals. And then we also have obviously our strategic plan within our department. But our overarching goal that we have is obviously to empower and to educate our student athletes and basically assist them to get them to that next step. So everything that we're doing is in alignment with that one goal. So yes, I have long-term goals that are, along with that, but then sometimes my day-to-day goal is I walk in the door and I just say, wow, I would really love to get my inbox down to 100 today. And it is that simplistic, but that's what's going to give me the breathing room for me to be able to focus on this larger long-term goal I'm trying to get to. So, and also it really is dependent upon the time of year. Obviously, working in college athletics, I'm an academic year based. So from, July, August, when the student athletes start returning until about May-ish, I'm really focused on what are we doing here to make sure that they are academically successful and we're winning championships during the year. Well, I have this small window of time during the summer where I'm trying to plan for the next year and play a little bit of catch up from the spring, plus also take some breathers, take some vacations, and focus on life in general. So it's very cyclical, but it also is very dependent upon the time of year. But like Dave said, it's also, you have to be kind of flexible in what you're doing here. There will be something that comes in from left field that you have to pivot on that dime and say, okay, well, this is our priority right now. And at the end of the day, it's still part of our strategic plan. It's getting us to that North Star and our overall mission. But you got to be flexible and know that, yeah, something's going to come and we're just going to have to take that too.
I have never worked in an environment where there weren't unexpected things coming at you. So I think that is great insight to share, that it's not unique to wherever you are. It's going to happen in sports world as well. Eira, how about you?
Yeah, for me, keeping a content calendar really keeps me focused on what we have to do, because again, like, we are going to get those unexpected things that will throw everything into chaos. So just knowing what you already had to do is really key. And it also helps when you're working with other departments, because like some of our goals are tied into other department goals. In sports, a lot of time your goals on content are still tied into sales goals, like, how many tickets is social selling, so that kind of stuff. So being able to prove like, hey, we did do all these posts and we're using tracking links, that helps a lot with keeping those goals in mind and making sure you're hitting your goals on the content side, but you're also helping out other departments. Same with like partnership goals. Those are usually really key things that you work with when you do social. So looking over analytics is a huge one for me, especially coming into a new team, kind of comparing where we were when I first arrived to how we're doing, 3 months later now. Just keeping an eye on all those numbers at all times is really key. Just because it helps you kind of see what's been working and what maybe isn't working. Like you can, look at a certain type of post, like maybe graphics are just underperforming compared to like photo or video, or maybe video is underperforming and we can spend more resources in a different area. I think a really big one that's come into play on social right now is like short form video versus long form video. People have attention spans of 10 seconds. So being able to look at your analytics and prove that can help redirect like that kind of strategy when you're planning your long-term goals of like, engagement and impressions and where you want the team to be performing.
And I think you also hit on something that I'm seeing across industries, which is data-driven decision making, and really kind of looking at how things are performing to decide how you proceed in the future. So that also tees up the next question, which is focused on innovation. And so thinking a little bit about how you see innovation coming into your space where you're working within the sports industry. And what is the value of innovative ideas, business practices, or processes in your workspace? Dave, you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure, happy to. I mean, I think it's very important. And I haven't really talked much about what we do at Visit Sacramento, so I'll take a second to set the stage with that before I kind of jump into the question a little bit further. But our job at Visit Sacramento is to bring events, bring people to visit Sacramento, spend their money here in our hotels, our restaurants, support our local economy, and then go home. But that benefits people that live here. So our job is to support Sacramento through tourism. And so the sports entertainment team specifically does that by attracting sports events and other events to Sacramento. We also have another department that handles a lot of the meetings and conventions and conferences that come into Sacramento. Our team specifically focuses on sports and other events. And so, innovation is huge for us. We're competing against literally every other city in the U.S. to do what we do. Obviously, we have our competitors that are more closely aligned to our size and amenities that we have here in Sacramento. But when you go to a trade show that we go to where all the cities are trying to, present themselves for event organizers, everyone has a picture of a river and a brewery and a basketball court. And so it's, how do you say, Sacramento's different? How do you tell our story of farm to fork and agriculture and why that's important to our culture, why our relationship with Sac State, how that factors into when we're hosting an NCAA championship, why that makes our events better than in other cities. And so being innovative in that marketing and storytelling space is super important, but also Sacramento and the features and amenities we have lend itself to that, I think, quite naturally as well. And then a little bit more, specifically, I think being innovative, being creative helps you also, diversify what you do and insulate yourself maybe from some potential downturns. Prior to the pandemic, we as an organization had made a commitment to where historically we were really focused on conferences and conventions as the main driver of tourism to Sacramento. We realized that that's important. It's still hugely important and our number one driver, but there are other things that we can do to enhance that, like investing in entertainment festivals like Aftershock, like investing in sports events, and the things that we do with Sac State and the things we do at Golden One Center, and other events like Ironman that's coming up this weekend. But by doing those things, we were able to then when the pandemic did come, and meetings went away, as things started to open up, meetings were really slow to come back. But some of those outdoor events, sports events, other things that were outdoors, were able to come back sooner. So we were able to bounce back a little bit more quickly than other cities because we had kind of been innovative on the front end of that, anticipating that someday, it's obviously better to have your resources spread out, and we just kind of thought about that a little differently than other destinations.
So your innovation helped you be resilient. I love that.
So.
I think that's important in workspaces, because kind of to the point earlier of you never know what workload's coming your way. You also never know what environmental impacts are gonna hit you from an industry standpoint or a community standpoint. So Pamm, how about you?
It's interesting. I think from an innovation standpoint, what it does for us, we're an athletic department inside of, a college campus, which means that on some level, we are very dependent on higher education. So what innovation does for us is it allows us to be kind of along the same lines as Dave said, for us to be resilient when there's shifts in either the NCAA landscape, or we have shifts in personnel, or we even have funding reductions, or raised expectations, or anything like that. It's like it's the ability for us to look externally, look at other athletic departments and see what other folks are doing. I'm a big advocate of not reinventing the wheel. I will look at somebody else's department and I will say, oh, that actually works for you. Tell me how it works, tell me how it doesn't work, and I will take all the good things and I will change the logo and I'll bring it right in here to Sac State. Because somebody else is always doing it better than whatever it is that I'm trying to do. So for me, that's really where it comes from. I'm looking externally. I'm looking to see who's doing it better than we are, who has already kind of worked the kinks out, but that enables us to be able to pivot. So like, I would say probably the biggest example is this change in presidency when we went from President Nelson over to President Wood. So President Nelson was very much a champion for athletics. President Nelson believes in athletics and loves athletics. When you look at what President Wood is doing, he believes in athletics and loves athletics, but you would never know that he was never a sports fan. He can't tell you the rules on some of the sports that we have. But what President Wood sees athletics as is an enrollment driver. And so he knows that if athletics does well, it raises the view of, of Sacramento State overall nationwide. So what does that do? It causes us to completely shift in what we're doing here. Yes, at the end of the day, we're always trying to win games and we're trying to graduate our student athletes. And yes, we're trying to win championships. But now we're way more the front doorstep than we have been in the past. And that causes us to change and that causes us to be innovative. So for us, it's constantly looking around to say, okay, how are we going to do this? How are we going to help our president ensure that Sac State stays on the tip of the tongue for everybody nationwide? How do we help in increase enrollment? Because at the end of the day, that's what we're here to do. So that's how we kind of incorporate it here with us. It is a frantic and forensic pace a lot, but I mean, that's also college athletics. Let's be real about that. So.
Yes, that is very real. And I think hearing you talk about innovation, part of it is giving yourself and your area that you oversee permission to try something new.
Oh, yeah.
And, learn from that experience. It may not always be a successful something new, but you're learning and you're growing and you're enhancing what you have to offer.
Definitely.
All right, Eira.
Yeah, innovation is definitely a huge part of what I do, just because trends are always changing, new platforms are always emerging, so you're having to adapt to what's going on. Like one big shift we've seen is we've lost a lot of users on Twitter who have migrated over to Blue Sky. So having to like start all over on a new platform while still maintaining the old platforms has been really interesting. And then trends too, for us, like one of the big things with like innovation and staying on top of stuff is being consumers of the media that we're producing as well. So like, we're all on different channels. We all are all constantly seeing what everybody else is doing, while still wanting to like jump on trends early. But I think one big thing for content side is knowing when to jump on a trend. You don't want to jump on a trend just because everybody's doing it. You want to make sure that it's makes sense with your brand and what you're already doing. One really good example is one of our videographers she's really entrenched into like the more of like the cinema side of video versus like the sports side. And she's like, hey, we're seeing this trend popping up where like the skinny Instagram video, like everybody's doing it on the video side, nobody's doing it in sports yet. And then I think that changed within like, I think she told us that in the morning. 3 hours later, the first team started posting it. And it's just like, that's how quickly things happen. Like somebody will see it, they'll pick it up. Thankfully, we were already ready to go with that one because we had like thought through like, oh, how could we like jump on it? That would make sense. And we used it essentially as a little bit of a ticket push while doing something cool with the video. But yeah, just being ready, I think, is a big thing in sports. Like you're constantly on your feet, like ready to go, ready to jump on whatever's next. And that doesn't just apply to content. I think that applies to anything that you do in sports. Well, at the drop of a pin, like something's happening. We had a player decide that they were announcing their retirement on Friday and we had to roll it out by Monday. So that was like quick, like being, thinking on your feet, what can we produce in this short amount of time that like will do justice to her career and we can celebrate her and give her flowers. But knowing that we have a very limited window to produce all of that content. So yeah, I think definitely just also for me, it's just like I said, like consuming the media, being on TikTok, looking at things at a lens from like as a viewer versus like someone who's actively producing content, I think is really key. And again, I'll go back to analytics. Like it's such a important part, I think, of innovation, of just like seeing what's working. It helps a lot to navigate things. And so you're not just jumping on things for the sake of doing it again. But knowing that it's going to produce results and that it's making sense with your brand and it's resonating with the people who are consuming your media.
100%. Oh, Dave.
Yeah, while we were talking, it made me just think too that, obviously we're talking here a lot about getting started in your career. I think that it's important when you are early in your career, if you, especially I think when new people come in with fresh ideas, see something that's been done the same way for a long time, and instead of just kind of commiserating with your colleagues, I don't know why we do this way, or there's a better way, talk to your manager about that. Come in with a written proposal. Here's the way we do things now. Here's how I think we should do it, and here's why. Here's the business case. Here's how it saves us money. Here's how it brings in additional revenue. Here's how it saves staff time. Be proactive in that regard. I think even if maybe your suggestion isn't taken, maybe you'll be led into some additional information that explains why we do it this way. That's a great idea, but we do it this way because of this, and maybe you didn't realize that. Or at minimum, it shows some proactivity, some thoughtfulness and innovation on your part. And if you're in an organization that doesn't value that at all and just says no all the time, maybe you don't want to be there anyway. But I think there's definitely when you're starting out, there's an opportunity to kind of take that extra step, show that initiative, show that instead of just saying in a meeting, I think we should do it this way, come up with a plan, present that, and explain why.
I think you just made me reflect on something from early in my career. One of my very first managers, he responded really well to things, to ideas, but to actually get action, following up in writing, and came up with this format of, what is the issue? What's the background information, and what are you suggesting or proposing? And that really allowed me to kind of catapult what I was doing within the organization. And so it goes a long way to document how you could help in addition to just kind of saying your thoughts and ideas. I am loving hearing about the team behind all the teams that are kind of making the magic happen, because we can't all be the ones on the court or on the field or on the track. So let's go to, what advice would you give to someone, a student or a graduate of Sacramento State, that's at the start of their career or maybe changing their career? What advice would you give them about getting into the team behind the team in the sports world? Pamm, let's start with you.
I would say a few things. One of them that Eira actually mentioned earlier, it's sad to say this, but the sports world is very small and we all know each other. So I've worked with Dave on multiple projects. And so it's like, we all do know each other. It will come up when you start to interview for jobs. A quick story is that I was interning here way back in the day and was applying for jobs nationwide. And I had applied for a job at University of North Texas. One of the football coaches at North Texas was on that committee, had seen my resume, saw that I worked at Sac State, called one of the football coaches at Sac State and said, hey, what do you know about Pamm? Well, it hadn't even been announced in the department that I was looking for a new job. And so that coach calls me and is like, why are you looking to leave? I mean, it's that level. And so it happened in the very beginning. It happens to this day. We all do know each other. So it is about how you're treating other people. It is how you're working with everybody else. I would also say to not be afraid to try new things. You think that you're going to be coming into college athletics doing one thing, and you may or may not like it. When I very first came in, I would say actually to back up, I mentioned it before, I was a licensed funeral director for 5 years. I graduated from here at 24. I didn't start even working in college athletics until I was 36. So clearly I had a life. I was married, I was working for the state, I worked for a funeral home, I did a whole lot of other things. And then I pivoted and was able to take all the skills that I learned early on in these other jobs and translate them over into what I wanted to do. It was like I finally woke up one day and went, wow, people actually get paid to work in sports. This is the best thing ever. How do I figure out how to nose into that? So And then I started interning in a bunch of different places. I started interning in here. I came in marketing and I hated it. I know I'm not creative, and I figured that out from the jump. I went over into sports information, and those are the folks that are writing the press releases and news releases and stats. And I knew I hated that as well. Somebody suggested I go work in NCAA compliance, which is the link between the NCAA back to the schools. I knew nothing about it. And I was like, why should I do this? And they said, well, you mentioned at one point you wanted to go to law school. And quite frankly, they also told me you can be kind of mean sometimes, but you do it in a nice way. And so people are okay with it. And that's how I got my foray into college athletics, was through NCAA compliance, but it was from trying different things. So you'll be trying different things along the way. You're going to talk to people who are doing things you think is cool. And then you get in there and you'd be like, oh, this is 100% what I don't want to do. And that's part of the learning experience. And also know that your areas of interest are going to change as you move forward. I came in NCAA compliance. Now I'm doing a lot more holistic student athlete development areas. How are we ensuring that our student athletes are ready to launch when they get done with their athletic eligibility? If you think about it, our student athletes have probably played their sport since they were 5, and then all of a sudden they're graduating, and then they're like, oh my gosh, now what? So I get concerned about the now what. That's the space that I work in. But I never would have thought when I came in the very beginning in NCAA compliance, or even way back in the beginning when I first graduated in undergrad, that I was, working for the state, that I would ever be doing this. So I've pivoted a lot in my career. So be okay with the pivots, be okay with trying something new, and know that we all know each other, and we're about, as they say with Kevin Bacon, probably 2 degrees of separation from each one of us at any point in time.
And I think early in your remarks, you hit one of the things essential to the pivot is knowing that all your skills that you're gaining along that journey generally are going to be transferable. And just that's where you do have to put your marketing hat on, your creative hat, and figure out, how do I tell an employer in a field I haven't worked in that these skills translate to their workplace? So Eira, how about you? Advice you would give?
Definitely along those same lines, like you might pivot. I mean, I was a journalism major. I thought I was going to be doing sports journalism and writing, which is why I was doing an internship with KCRA. But then I found social and marketing, and I actually did like it. And I realized that that was like an area that I would rather go into. And then just talking to people, again, talking to somebody who was at one of our other local stations was like, I would recommend you stay in marketing. I think you would really like it, versus like doing the reporter thing. And I did. And it was like very much like I didn't know anything about running social. I was obviously on social media, but it was still also very early. So I've been at a really cool point in my life where I've gotten to essentially grow with social media as an actual business department within companies, which has been really cool to see. Because I remember when we first started, it was so unserious. And now, you're still having fun and you're still doing that kind of stuff, but there's a level of professionalism that you still have to keep even on social, especially when you're running a brand. Um, Another one is like, take advantage of the relationships you build. Again, talk to people, especially when you're still in school. Talk to your professors. That's how I got my internship at KCRA, because I was, always in office hours with one of my professors. And he was like, hey, there's all these internships you could do. You should start applying. Take advantage of taking internships, of doing those internships while you're in school, especially if you can get credit for them. When I was at Sac Republic, one of our interns was like a freshman, and we hired her because she was just like super into it. And now she's been like, I think she's been working for, Sac State athletics, like doing work for them. She's gotten internships with the River Cats. So especially if you want to do more of like that sports video or like photography, I would say start getting experience where you can find, connect with the athletic department at your school. There's always teams, like, local teams that are looking for help on both the amateur level and the youth level. So just make those opportunities for yourself. Take the initiative. It's a competitive field for sure. So you want to get as much experience as you can.
I think both you and Pam hit on like volunteering, interning, kind of going and testing the waters and getting yourself known in that industry. I think that can go a long way in a lot of industries, but it sounds like especially in this one, to help get your foot in the door. Dave.
Yeah, and I'm probably going to say a lot of that as well. But and I think you mentioned it early on as well, like network, network, network as much as you can. I know when I was starting out, it wasn't as easy as it is now with LinkedIn and other social media. You kind of had to keep track of where people were through, more conventional means. But now, at least on a surface level, you can be connected to so many people. So I think that's a great resource to build your network, to reach out to people. I think feel free to ask people for informational interviews sometimes if there's a field you'd like to get in. I think you'd be surprised how many people are willing to take you up on that offer to learn a little bit more about their industry, what they do. Obviously we all work in sports, but all very different positions and all very different types of organizations. So take advantage of resource. I'll say now, if you're on this call and you'd like to learn a little bit more about what we do at Visit Sacramento in the sports and entertainment space, feel free to reach out. But and then echoing what's already been said, I think as you're exploring those opportunities, yeah, you need to put yourself out there and not just network for the sake of networking, but also to kind of show your initiative, show your skill set, volunteer for events that are happening on campus, with Sac State Athletics or we're doing here. We had kind of coming out of the pandemic, I had someone reach out to me who had been laid off. Unfortunately, it was in an adjacent space to what we do, but was having a hard time and not getting much response, had a young family. And so we started a little bit of an email communication, and then kind of coming out of COVID, we actually hosted an event, World's Strongest Man, on the first day that California reopened and was allowing outdoor events. And I told him, why don't you come out and volunteer with us for a few days and meet the team? We don't have anything right now, but you never know. And he came out and rolled up his sleeves and helped us. And then, probably a few months later, I had a call from someone we work with locally who runs a lot of events in Northern California and leases a facility here locally, and they needed someone to kind of manage that facility. And I said, well, why don't you reach out to this guy? I don't know him very well, but he's, presents very well and came out and helped us out with some things. And he's been in that role now for probably 4 or 5 years. So yeah, you never know. And I think just being humble and being able to take a step back and roll up your sleeves, show your initiative, and then early on be patient with yourself. You're always going to wish promotions and jobs were coming faster than they do, but be patient and take advantage of the time you have to soak up experience and surround yourself with people who do things the right way for the right reasons.
That is excellent advice, and I think across the board, advice that applies at any stage of life or any stage of your career. So thank you all for sharing that. I'm going to suggest we jump over to the Q&A right now, and then we'll do one wrap-up question at the end, but I want to make sure we can hit as many of the Q&A questions as possible. So I'll jump in with the first one. I graduated in 2020, and most of my experience has been in my current field. I'm looking to dive into a new sector. Any advice on making yourself an appealing candidate to resume building opportunities in a new field? I'm going to go to Pamm. We started talking about transferable skills. So Pamm.
Well, I'm going to do this, Leslie, because I probably am the one who did the hardest pivot. Through my time, I graduated. I went to go work as a funeral director for 5 years. I worked in an automotive repair company where we actually were producing the information on CDs and DVDs. And this was literally when the internet was born. That's how old I am. And so we were transitioning to an internet-based product. I was out working with repair shops to get them to test our new equipment. It was at that point in time that I ended up talking to a couple of people that were like, you really like sports. Why are you working in this industry? And then I ended up kind of talking my way into an internship, and then ended up getting a job with the Sacramento Sports Commission, which is actually part of Visit Sacramento, where Dave is at. This was way before that. But when I started then to do the pivot to get into college athletics, I literally sat down with somebody and I said, I need you to help me rewrite my resume. And what they did was they actually took the task that I was already doing And we actually changed my resume from a chronological resume to a functional resume. And then looking at the jobs that I was applying for, and we were literally saying, these are the skills that I had to accomplish those tasks that was listed in the job description. So I would honestly tell you, you need to start looking at what it is that you want to do, and then what it is that you're already doing, and how you can translate what you're doing into the words that that job description is looking for, because you're already doing it. You just need to put it in the wordage that that job description is looking for. So hopefully that's helpful, Leslie. But if not, you can shoot me an email. My email address is at hornetsports.com, and I'm in the staff directory. Shoot me an email and I'll help you. But I've done that pivot part, and it works. You just have to have somebody be a little bit creative with your resume.
And in addition to Pam's offer of assistance, a shameless plug, the Career Center here on campus will serve all alumni. So you can schedule an appointment with a career counselor and kind of do that dissection of your resume with them and kind of get their insight on how to help. And there's also another tool called the Sac State Career Network, which is an online mentoring platform. And so alumni are in that system, and they have volunteered to do informational interviews or resume review. So you can find real, alumni in real time that are willing to kind of talk through some of those things with you. So I encourage you to consider both of those resources as well. Our next question, what kinds of software are most useful or beneficial in your workspace? And what do you wish your team used earlier? Anyone want to take software?
I can do what we use. I
Sure.
think the biggest one is be familiar with like the Office suite, Teams, all that kind of stuff. Getting your way around a, spreadsheet is super important. I think honestly, more than software, it's just like learning how to present things is the biggest thing that I've learned in my career. Like learning how to do proposals and things like that. For software, I think it just varies so much depending on what you want to do. Like ticketing uses a very different software than you're going to be using on the marketing side. If you are doing marketing, being familiar with social media, being familiar with analytics tools. But I feel like unless there's like a specific area in sports that you're looking to work for, it's the resources are just so different. If you're looking even like on soccer ops side, like if you want to do like more of coaching and like strategy, very different software than you'd be using anywhere else. So the one that applies to, I think everything is pretty much like, the Office suite, like you'll use it across platforms, Slack, that kind of stuff. But other than that, it'll vary like depending on where you are in the industry.
Great insight. Anyone else on software, or I'll go on to the next question?
Agree with what Eira said. Yeah, for sure.
All right. Next question. How often do you use presentation skills internally? How easy or difficult is it for you to break down your recommendations to someone who is outside of your industry?
Go ahead, Pam.
I would say probably it's not that difficult to present internally. I think the biggest thing is knowing, because you asked about how difficult is it to somebody outside of your industry. You need to know what their motivation is. So that's probably once you know what their motivation is and what they're looking for, then that's going to dictate how you're going to present to them. So obviously internally within the athletics department, we're all speaking the same language, and then we all understand all the acronyms and all the things. But if I've got to go and present to somebody external from this organization, I'm going to need to find out, okay, what is it that is going to be most beneficial for you, and figure out how I can meet that need. Dave, you want to add on to that or go a completely different route?
Well, I know. I think you said it right. I think you have to think about your audience, and when we're presenting things, externally, it could be a variety of stakeholders, whether we're presenting to a city official as to why we're pursuing something for some reason, or if we're presenting to someone who owns an event and why you need to bring your event to Sacramento. And even within that, there's layers and different factors. Is someone is someone who wants to bring their event to Sacramento, what's most important to them? Do they want to be here because it's an outdoor event and they can do it any time of the year, or is it more important to them that we have X number of hotel rooms in our downtown core? And so, yeah, I think obviously we do present, yes, use presentation software and present quite often, and obviously those just get tailored to the occasion and to the audience you're speaking to. Did that answer the question?
I think so. I wanted to underscore quickly one thing that Pam said quickly as she was going on is acronyms. Especially if you're talking to external audiences, really limit your use of acronyms because you'll lose an audience so fast if they don't know what you're talking about because you're using an acronym. I've watched that glaze kind of take over people. So, next question, going into what Pam said about finding what works and taking elements to reuse, what do you do to immerse yourself in areas where you can find these systems in place to reuse?
This is all about networking. It is literally, who do I know that's doing my job? So, I mean, it's that simple. I know enough people within our athletic conferences that I can say, okay, how did you handle this over here? And they will send me whatever documentation, or I'll have conversation with them. But that's really where that networking comes into play.
And I know I've seen Erin, who is on the alumni relations team, posting a number of things in the chat about upcoming networking events, places where you can learn how to build your networking skills. It can be daunting to walk up to someone you don't know and introduce yourself. So work on those skill sets and take advantage of events that the university, the Alumni Association offers to help you do just that. So just want to put another shameless plug in there. I'm going to ask this question, have everyone take a moment to chime in. The last question is, where would one look for openings in the sports industry, and all ranges, like not just professional sports, but also the collegiate level? So if each of you could share a recommendation on where to look for jobs. I see Eira is unmuted. So Eira.
Teamworks Online is for pro sports, but I think they also do some collegiate jobs. So that's the big one. And then LinkedIn, honestly, a lot of people will be like, hey, we're looking for this. And then you have somebody directly that you can reach out to and be like, hi, I applied, would love to talk, or something like that. So I would say LinkedIn is a huge one.
Agreed. I think those are probably the two biggest, aside from more niche, sites and organizational websites, depending on what you're looking to do and where you're looking to be.
For intercollegiate athletics, the NCAA, the market is basically the marketplace is what they call it. That's where the NCAA jobs are usually posted. Also, they are on Teamworks. They're also I think it's called College Sports Connect, I think is what it's called. And then there are also kind of, like Dave said, kind of niche websites. There's one that's for I know their old name and I'm blanking on their new name, but it's for women leaders. And so women leaders, if you Google that, there's a lot of their jobs on there as well. But the big ones are NCAA, the market, and College Sports Connect.
Fantastic. Well, that takes us through all of the questions that were submitted through the Q&A, and we've got 2 minutes to wrap up. So quick, rapid fire closing thought. Share a fun, personal or professional goal that is still on your horizon, something you're still aiming for. And Dave, you're unmuted, so I'm going to let you go first.
All right, great. Yeah, with the help from Pam and her team over at Sac State, we want to bring a women's Final Four to Sacramento.
Yes.
We were a finalist a couple of years ago. It was the first time we've been a finalist, and so we feel like we have a pretty good shot at that when we bid again in a couple of years. But it's one of the larger events that Sacramento can host in terms of the hotels we have, and it would fill every hotel room and take all of our facilities for all the ancillary events that happen throughout the week. But that's a big one that would be really great, and it's personal to us over here to try to bring that to Sacramento.
Awesome. Eira, how about you?
I would love to work a major final, so preferably in soccer, but I've gotten to do like the Open Cup final with Sac Republic, and that was incredible. And then another one's I'd love to work abroad. So like whether it's with the Premier League, the Women's Super League in England, I think that would be incredible.
Agreed. And Pam.
Now I feel bad. You said personal or professional, and I chose personal, so here we go. Although I
okay.
would love to, I'm with Dave, for us to get the women's Final Four here, but my personal one was to see the Seattle Mariners win the World Series this year. So there's that. So Ira,
All right.
Ira, I might be calling you just to kind of be like, can I crash on your couch when I spend too much money on tickets? So go Wims.
Well, it's still in the sports realm, so awesome. I want to thank the three of you so much for your time today, your great insights, your advice. I've really appreciated our conversation, and I'm sure all of our attendees have as well. And to all of our attendees, we will send a follow-up email with a link to this video if you want to watch it again. Also, we'll include some of the links that have been shared in the chat. And just want to say I appreciate you all for being here. And with that, it is exactly 1 o'clock. So I want to be respectful of your time. Stingers up, go Hornets, come to homecoming this weekend. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.